Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Gustavo Tolosa, your host for today for Dr. McDougall Live. But of course, today we have a guest, and it is our beloved Dr. Doug Lisle. And we have a Q&A session. We have a few questions that some of you have turned in, but please feel free to type questions on the chat box, and we will try to get as many in as possible. We will be making some changes to our webinar series, and I'll announce that at the end. And I just want to welcome Dr. Lisle. Won't delay this any longer. How are you doing, Dr. Lisle?
Good, good. We're doing fine now that we got everything hooked up, Gustavo.
That's right. That's right.
Our friends have no idea what goes on with us.
Every time we learn something new.
You got it.
Well, one of these days we will be experts.
Yes.
Okay, so Dr. Lisle, we have a few questions, but before that, I just want to tell people, because many of our guests here are new, so that they know a little bit about you, that you have a Ph.D. in psychology, and you are the psychologist for the McDougall program, and also at True North. And you're the author of. Just tell us a little bit about The Pleasure Trap, about the book.
Right. The Pleasure Trap is the story of how really the modern food supply has been turned into. It came from whole natural foods in nature, and we've turned it into things that are drug-like, where they are better than normal, or I called them magic food because they light up the pleasure centers of the brain. And so as a result of that, it creates an addictive-like problem. It's not like addiction, like alcohol or drugs, etc., in that level, but it is a miniature version of that, or a junior varsity version of that, and it's just enough to have it hard for people to keep out of it. That's what that story is.
Very good. And you also have a website that it's just remind me, because sometimes I forget if it's net or com. I think it's
com now.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And that is just escaped. I had it in my head.
Esteem Dynamics.
Esteem Dynamics.
Yes.
Esteemdynamics.com. And people can go there and make an appointment with you. So I'm going to type it in here in just
Very
a minute.
good.
All right. So how about if we jump in with a question?
Sure.
You ready? Okay. So someone is asking, if I eat starches, I gain weight. What's going on with me?
Okay. All right. Oh boy. I have this conversation several times a week. And so let's back up and let's figure out why people think this. Most of the time, what they're going to be saying is, well, on Thursday I ate potatoes, and Friday morning I was 2 pounds heavier. So what's the deal? When people are working on their weight, what happens is they generally weigh themselves daily or quite often, and they essentially try to piece together a cause and effect with respect to what it is that they're eating and what it is that their weight is. Now, this is a mistake. And the reason why it's a mistake is because your weight in its fluctuations from day to day is an extraordinarily misleading caliper of what's actually happening with respect to your fat content on your body. The fat content on your body is changing minutely from day to day, very, very small changes. So someone that is losing weight very quickly is losing maybe 3 or 4 ounces a day. That's what they would be doing. Someone who's gaining weight quickly, very quickly, might be gaining maybe an ounce, maybe 2 ounces a day. I mean, you would really have to work hard at it, but you could do it. If you were eating McDonald's with both hands, you might be able to gain as much as a couple of ounces a day. So people aren't thinking along these lines. They're thinking about that they gained a pound yesterday or lost 2 pounds the day before, et cetera, or gained 3 pounds in a week when they went on a cruise, et cetera. But this isn't actually what's happening at all. What's happening is that the fat content of your body is extremely stable from day to day. And let's look at what it is that you're staring at on the scale. Most of what you are is a bunch of water. You're basically a hot water heater. So that's what most of your weight is. And in order to heat that weight, you have to have a bunch of calories. That's what your starch, or however it is that you get your calories, that's what's keeping you alive and keeping the temperature up and not having it at room temperature. So your water, the amount of water content in you is the biggest issue with respect to your weight fluctuations from day to day. And it fluctuates quite a bit. So it's not at all hard for your weight to fluctuate 1% or even 2% a day. So if you're 200 pounds, you could easily fluctuate 4 pounds from one day to the next. But notice that it would be impossible for your fat content to fluctuate 4 pounds from one day to the next. In fact, it is impossible for your fat content to fluctuate 1 pound a day from one day to the next. In fact, it's essentially impossible for your fat content to fluctuate as much as half a pound from one day to the next. Now, if you are 400 pounds and you are water fasting or eating a 600 calorie diet, it might be possible for you to lose a half a pound of fat in a day, but you couldn't gain half a pound of fat in a day. There'd be no way that could happen. Now, let's see now what it is that we're really looking at for this problem. The problem is that people are trying to essentially run a scientific experiment on themselves, where they watch what they eat, they remember it, and then they step on the scale a few hours later or the next day, and they say, ooh, I ate potatoes and I'm 2 pounds heavier today, so starch makes me gain weight. Now, starch could make you gain weight, but not gain fat. So now let's figure out what's going on there. It turns out that, so there's several things that cause your weight to vary from day to day. The first one is how much water you have in you. And so that's going to be largely dependent upon two factors. One of them is going to be how much sodium you have in your system. And so if you've eaten, literally, if you had been on a really strict McDougall diet, and then you ate a bag of Lay's potato chips, there's enough salt in that you could very easily absorb a pound or two of water over the next day. So you might be 2 pounds heavier tomorrow morning than you were this morning as a result of this, and you'd try to be figuring out what caused this, and you wouldn't know. What caused it was a little tiny bit of sodium, the amount of sodium that might be in a teaspoon. That would be enough for your body to absorb a couple pounds more of water. Meanwhile, you'd be chasing your tail trying to figure out what it is that you ate. And you'd say, well, the potato chips were only an ounce, so that isn't it. So it must have been the potatoes that I ate. That must have been cause for me to, quote, gain weight. So that's one issue. That's one water fluctuation issue, is the amount of sodium in your diet from day to day, which fluctuates potentially considerably. Another thing is how much fiber is in your colon. How much poop do you have? How much water or how much urine is in your bladder? That's also a major factor. There's also another major factor, and that is how much glycogen is in your liver and in your muscles. So glycogen is just the sugar that you store for burning. It's effectively not you. It's in you. So it's kind of like a backpack on your back. The backpack isn't part of you, and if you weigh yourself on the scale with a backpack on, you weigh more. That is also true with glycogen. So if you eat potatoes, you're going to add glycogen or any other starch. Basically, this is how it is that human beings store their fuel. So if you are, for example, low on glycogen one day, and then let's suppose that you decided that for 3 days you were going to do a ketogenic diet because your friends said it was great. So you go on a ketogenic diet, and a ketogenic diet with no carbohydrate in it. What will happen is that you will use up your glycogen, and you'll get down to, let's suppose you lose a pound of glycogen over the next 2 days. So you use all that glycogen up, and now your poor body is now out of sugar, which it's designed to burn, and all it has in it now, all you're burning is you're burning some fat and you're burning some protein. So you've got this ugly fuel that you're burning, but your weight has dropped because you've used up the glycogen, and then something else happens. And that is that as a result of that, you'll carry less water. So for every pound of glycogen that you gain or lose, you also will lose 3 parts of water. That's how the body works mechanically. So now let's suppose that 3 or 4 days from now, you are out of glycogen because you're on a ketogenic diet. And then you say, boy, this feels terrible and feels awful. I just don't think this is right, even though I've lost 2 or 3 pounds. And you think, well, gosh, maybe this is the right way to go. And then you decide, you know what? You listen to a Jeff Novick lecture and you're like, okay, forget it. I'm not going to do that. So now you go eat yourself a nice bowl of rice and vegetables and a couple of potatoes, and you feel a lot better. And then you step on the scale the next morning and you're 3 pounds heavier. You're like, starch is causing me to gain weight. Okay, let me tell you what's happened. What's happened is that by storing a pound of glycogen back in your liver, where you should have it, you will also then carry 3 additional pounds of water. That's how that's going to work. So the body is now more hydrated. It's healthier. That's what it should be. You haven't gained any fat. So as you gain that 3 pounds of starch and water, your fat content dropped that day, probably by 2 or 3 ounces. Meanwhile, your weight went up 3 pounds and you are freaking out. So this is why it is that I tell people that if you're going to do this program, this is how it is that you should do it. If you're going to be what I call a scale monkey, male monkey, that you get a little bit far from the scale, and then pretty soon you hang from the tree, and then you have to lean down and look at the scale, and you just can't keep away from the scale. So what you want to do if you're a scale monkey is the following. You want to be eating what you think is a healthy diet, which is this diet. And then what you're going to do is you're going to measure your weight, say 3 days in a row in the morning, and then you're going to take the average. So let's suppose it's 164 pounds on average. Fine. Then we're not going to worry about the scale, and we're not going to change what we do about the diet. We're going to forge ahead, and we're going to eat a starch target diet where the big wet starches, rice, beans, potatoes, corn, wheat, oats, etc., those kinds of things are the center of your diet. You're going to surround those with fresh fruits and vegetables and salad and etc. But those are the center of your calories. That's a starch diet. Now 5 or 6 weeks later, we're going to take a look at the scale again on the same strategy, where we're going to take a 3-day average, and then we're going to see if we've gained weight. Okay? If you have, it isn't the starches that did it. It's the tofu cuties and the avocado and the nuts and whatever else it is. In other words, it's the high calorie density food. If you've done a good job at doing a maximum weight loss, or what Chef AJ calls an ultimate weight loss diet. In other words, if you've really reduced down to a minimum the nuts and avocado and dried fruit and all the rich foods out of the McDougall diet, then you will have lost weight. That's what's going to happen if you're overweight. So, if you're 5'6", 125 pounds and you're trying to lose the last 2 pounds, you might not lose it because there might not biologically be 2 pounds to lose. But if you are overweight, then you're going to find that the weight should drift off of you. But if you measure day to day, you're going to be completely confused because of the huge fluctuations that human weight has relative to the changes in fat content on a day-to-day basis. My friend Jeff Novick, his life seems a little too easy to me today. I just woke up and realized he's in Florida, and I don't think he has enough stress. In fact, last time I saw him, I think he's suffering from a stress deficiency. And it turns out that he has a checklist of 10 things that you should do about weight. And I think you all should write to him and say, Jeff, where's that checklist of 10? It's a very good checklist. It's beautiful. It's comprehensive. And yeah, you could all write to Jeff. Put that on the screen, Gustavo. I think Jeff is impressed.
Let's do that to him.
Yes, we need to do that.
Yeah.
All right. So I hope that makes sense to people, that this is usually, these questions are coming from folks that are very conscientious, and they're really trying to watch this process from day to day. And it's not a day-to-day process. Okay, it's a week to week at best, and not even a week to week process, because if you lose a pound a week, which would be doing really well, your weight this week may be 2 pounds higher than it was last week because of water fluctuation, and yet you may have lost a pound of fat, which is all we care about. So in order to make sure that you see what's happening in your program, you really have to look at it on, say, a 4 to 5 week basis, or even a 6 week basis. That's how we want to do that. Take an average now, take an average in 4 to 6 weeks, and then let's see whether or not you're losing or gaining weight. That's how we do that.
Right. It's just that in our age, I think we are so obsessed with numbers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we have also people that are obsessed with blood pressure. They're taking it. I know people that take, it's 8-9 times a day.
Right.
And so we're obsessed with numbers, and I think we're also trying to compare ourselves to others. And so I see a question from someone here that I hear a lot. I think that we think that when we adapt, when we take this way of eating, it works the same with everybody. But I mean, our bodies are all different. So here's someone that is asking, why do some people have slower results on the McDougall way of eating compared with others? Well, could it be because the bodies, we're all different? Or, I don't know. You go ahead.
Yeah, no question. So people differ considerably on essentially all dimensions. And weight loss is going to be a major dimension where there's going to be large individual differences, even on the same diet. So they've in studies where they have tried to see how people can gain weight, there was they used prisoners in one study, and they essentially incentivized them financially if they could gain weight. And one poor character that I think was like me ate 7,500 calories a day and could not gain any weight. It's not possible. So, Gustavo, I know that that's not you, but it is me, and this is the differences in genetics. So I have seen that if people eat an appropriate diet, they all head towards a very good, healthy body. That's what happens. So they all head that direction. But my friend Alan, who's naturally quite a bit bigger than I am, we're about the same height, but he's about 20% heavier than I am, and that's just he's a bigger person just by nature, and he also will gain weight easier. So if you're a curvy lady, you're going to gain weight easier, and if you are a big strong guy, if you've got you're more natural mesomorph, you will gain weight more easily, and it's probably going to be, if I ever could gain any weight, I would probably lose it very fast.
Right.
And people that gain weight easily probably do not lose it as easily. Their biology is just a little bit different. They will, though. I've got a McDougaller that was 280 pounds last July, and yesterday was 176. So there we go. She's doing fabulous, and she's coming up on her 70th birthday. So people that think that they can't lose weight after 50, I've got somebody that's I think 100, and I think she came in at 289. We're at 176, so we're 113 pounds since the middle of last summer, and she's on her way. She smells blood in the water now. She's trying to get back to her her 20s weight, and so I think she's going to get there. It's exciting to watch.
Right. Well, I mean, also it matters what we eat. Like you said earlier, I mean, we could be eating a plant-based diet, but if we are eating avocados and nuts and high density
Lara bars,
right?
That's one that I heard yesterday.
Yeah.
And again, people, you have to understand, you can make a lot of healthy choices that are healthy biochemically, that are good, they're good, healthy food, but they're not in a natural concentration relative to human natural history. So nuts can be perfectly good for you, and avocados perfectly good for you. And a Lara bar is a pretty good combination, essentially dried food and some nuts. The but we would not get these in any sort of concentration in nature. They would be relatively rare components of the human diet. And so therefore, when we get them on a daily basis, even a couple hundred calories worth, that can be artificially concentrated in the diet and keeping your weight above what would be ideal.
Right, right. Well, okay, very good. Since we're talking about food, someone has asked twice already, what do you eat in one day, Dr. Lisle?
What do I eat in a day?
Yeah,
Yeah, the,
regular day.
the days are different.
Right.
And so I would say typically I eat oatmeal with a banana and a few raisins and a little bit of brown sugar in the morning. That's what I eat very typically. That's most mornings. And so then for lunch, what's around this house is going to be lunch and dinner look pretty much the same. The difference is a lot of times at dinner I'll have a salad. So I follow the kind of food making plan that Jeff Novick talks about, where I have about 2 or 3 different kinds of soups or sauces rotating through the freezer. And so right now, what I'm going to be eating today is going to be spaghetti. So I've got the spaghetti noodles already cooked. So I got about 3 days worth of them cooked. And then I've got the spaghetti sauce was made about 3 weeks ago, and it's in the freezer and it's defrosting. So I'll be having that for dinner. And I have a salad. I always eat a salad out of the sacks that they have at the store, because you could buy them. If you buy 3 at a time or more, they're $2.49. So I'm a cheapskate. So I make sure that I always buy them in several at a time, because I'm planning on eating them. And so lunch and dinner are similar, except I don't eat a salad at lunch, or rarely do. I'm just too lazy and not that interested. I'm interested in a salad about once a day. On that salad at night, I'm going to have, if we have avocado in the house, then I'm happy about it, because I'm going to have some avocado in there. If I have forgotten to get avocados, I'm a little bit bummed, but I get bailed out by some other things that I like on my salad, which is I have pickled beets that I always buy in a jar and not in a can. The reason that's true is that the jar has the twist top and it's really convenient. So I'll put some beets on my salad. If I have to do the can, then you have to open the can, then you have to put it in Tupperware when you're done, and it's a big hassle. So everything for me is as easy as possible. And the other thing that I put on a salad is kidney beans, which I have to get in a can, which is an annoyance, but I just have to face the can opener, which is very fancy can opener, but it doesn't work very well. So
One of those.
it's like I just want a regular old hand can opener, but seemingly, I can't seem to keep a hold of this.
to keep,
Yeah. So anyway, these are the trials and tribulations of fixing your own food. So I have my salad looks like kidney beans, beets, and shredded carrots, and then if I've been astute and planned well, I've got avocado, which I usually do. So that's a big salad that I have, and then I'm going to have whatever the entree is. So at lunch, I may have a different entree, some kind of veggie goulash with rice that is really good, some kind of curry thing or whatever. So these are the kinds of things that I eat. And then I'm eating fruit whenever I want it all day long. So I usually have about 3 or 4 different kinds of fruit in the house. Usually it's bananas, grapes, pears, oranges, and apples. That's usually what I have. And, I usually eat the easiest thing because I'm lazy. And so it's usually the grapes.
Grapes. No, yeah. Well, thank you. That's great. I mean, I think that a lot of, I know also Chef AJ, and I know a lot of other people that really try to fit in as many green veggies like salads as possible.
Yeah, I don't think about that. Another thing that I will do usually once a week or twice a week, but usually once a week, is I just cook up a big pot of steamed vegetables. And so I will usually have that for one of those. If you think about that, there's sort of 14 meals aside from breakfast. And so usually I will have 1 or 2 meals a week that's all it is. It's just a pot of steamed vegetables. But I'm not I'm nobody for the kitchen. So I'm not a chef AJ. I'm not in there doing all the things that she does. I mean, I think it's fabulous what she does, and I would eat at her house any day, and I have, but I'm too lazy.
Yeah.
So I do a lot what Jeff prescribes, just because he's so efficient, and he's efficient. I'm lazy, and it works.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I just recently I learned to just buy the salad mix, put it in this huge bowl, and I
Yes.
add other things, and that lasts almost like 5 days because I don't put the dressing on it. So,
Yes.
and that way I can eat a salad every day at least for
That's
lunch a
actually
day.
a really good plan. I used to do that. I don't know why I got away from it. I figured I could stand having little Tupperware things with kidney
Mhm.
beans. I could do that and keep the salad in the sack. But yes, I used to do that. But then usually I would just make one salad, and I wouldn't stop in the middle of the week and make a second one.
Right, right.
But it is good sometimes to have a big salad bowl, and just put a big bunch of salad in there and do it once, and not put, if you're not going to put avocado in it, don't put it in there early. Put the avocado in at bits at a time as you're eating the salad during the week. But yeah, a salad like that, even with kidney beans and beets, can stand up pretty well for several days. So that's all good too. All right, what else do we
All
have?
right. We have another question. I'm not sure why I fall off track.
Yes.
What can I do to prevent this? That is the
Well,
question
yes.
of the day.
Yeah, a lot of this is one of these things. This reminds me a lot of the question about starches and weight gain. So once again, the human mind is working hard to try to figure out cause and effect. And so people have come up with all kinds of analyses about why it is that they fall off track. And the most common analysis that people come up with is that because falling off track is a bad thing and they really didn't want to do it, then maybe and it was potentially a big thing relative to their goals, then maybe something big happened to do it. So since it's a bad effect and it's big, maybe a big bad effect caused the big bad result. This is sort of the way the human mind would run those kinds of analyses. And so this is where we get all the theories of emotional eating and all this sort of stuff. The So let me explain what's actually happening very often. You get off track when uh, I'll sort of describe this technically in a little bit finer detail than maybe I've done before. The What's happening is that your life and your decisions follow generally the path of least resistance, which means that it's the you want to get the things that you want out of your day and your life with the least effort possible. So as a result, what's happened is that your mind has forged a pathway through your life space that optimizes the cost benefit analysis on energy expenditure. That's how it works. And so if healthy living has been important to you, you've gone to a lot of trouble to learn what to do, and you've actually gained quite a bit of skill, and you've done quite a bit of organization around making this happen. This doesn't just happen by accident. It's something that requires a lot of energy to actually get it going and get in what I call a groove. And if your groove is very deep, then it's just like a groove in a wood floor. It's like it's not that easy to get out of the groove because you are in a deep groove, because your life is organized around doing things in a certain way. It's like you always put your car keys in your wallet always in the same place at night. So when you wake up in the morning, you're like, there they are. And if you've done that 500 days in a row, then you just keep doing it that way, because you would feel uncomfortable not doing it that way. And it's important for the smooth organization of the next day to have all that organized. So healthy living at its best is what I call in a deep groove. Now, the thing is that things in life will life isn't a routine where every day is the same and the challenges and stressors remain exactly the same. So what happens is is that there is turbulence in our life that essentially is pushing against the groove. And so suddenly friends come over, from I don't know, they're visiting from Iowa, and they dropped in. They made you, it's like, now we got to drop everything. So now it turns out you got to go to the store and you have to bring some things in the house because it's going to turn out that they're not going to be eating this way. So now they leave 4 hours later. And what do we've got? We've got a bunch of stuff in the house that isn't supposed to be in the house. And now your mind starts running the cost benefit analysis of going over there and grabbing a handful of those potato chips. Now, you wouldn't have even considered those potato chips before because they weren't in your environment before, but now they're in your environment. Okay. So when I was at the prison, I was a maximum security prison psychologist for about 10 years. And if people would ring the buzzer accidentally, because we had a buzzer we'd wear on our belts, and if we banged it into the desk and rang the buzzer, all the guards would come to you. You have like 40 guards would run to you within 30 seconds to save you in case you were under attack, which you never were. But it didn't matter. You have to have that alarm, and every prisoner in the place knows you were in an alarm. So however, there would always be a false alarm, once or twice a week, as some poor psychologist or psychiatrist or nurse would bang their alarm accidentally, and then everybody comes running. Well, when everybody comes running, and it's a false alarm, if you did it, which I never did, but I had a friend of mine that had like 4 of them. You have to buy donuts for everybody. So it's going to turn out there's donuts, around prisons. And so sometimes they didn't know that I was a health psychologist. So sometimes I would walk through the break room and there's a bunch of donuts there. And once in a while, those donuts would jump out of the box into my mouth. Okay. Which is a serious problem with the jumping donuts. All right. So that, in other words, my environment shifts away from my deep groove environment. So it's not like the donuts were in my area very often. Probably once a month, there was donuts in my area, of the prison. And they wouldn't always jump in my mouth, but that's when I was, now I'm under some stress because now it's in the environment. So we're thinking about things like, gee, why did I get off course? Well, because, I don't know, my favorite dog died and I've never been this, now it all went up in smoke behind emotional eating. No, it wasn't emotional eating. It disturbed your turbulence. It disturbed your deep groove. Anything can disturb your deep groove. And this may sound like a cop-out, like, well, then you're just saying that anything can do it. And it's like, yeah, that is what I'm saying. Because healthy living is not consistent with the modern environment. So it requires consistent energy and organization to make this essentially what it is that you're going to do, or the default setting of the equipment. If we disturb the environment or disturb you for good or ill, whether it's something negative or something positive, the friend that called you on the phone that is dropping by could have been somebody that you're really happy to see, that you haven't seen in 4 years. There's nothing turbulent to me emotionally about there being donuts in the break room. Nothing. Like, I was just having a normal day, and then I walk in there, it's like, oh, why? Was there a false alarm yesterday that I didn't know about? Well, here it is. And so now I'm out of my deep groove because my environment is now threatening me with an opportunity that may yank at my nervous system and get it. Okay. So I had simple rules that if there's some enticing junk, you have to eat something healthy first. So I would do that, and a lot of times that would calm that down. But the deep groove or a groove is not easy to maintain because it requires energy to stay in the groove. You have to keep organized. You have to keep your time in a row. You have to get your stuff bought. You have to prepare it. And if you're tired, you're like, oh, forget it. Maybe we'll just go out to Chinese food. Well, then we get into a little bit of salt, and then maybe they bring some, I don't know, there's free wonton or whatever it is that day. Suddenly we're starting to get out of the deep groove. So this is really the issue. why do I get off track? You get off track because you were on track before in a groove, and then you got turbulence of any kind. And so the key to healthy living is to return back to the groove or return to routines. The healthy routines are the key to success here. And it's not an issue of whether or not you get off track ever. It's a question of how quickly and determined are you to return to routine. And that's actually the key to healthy living. And the reason why you get off track is because life shoves you out of routine. And as soon as you're out of routine, you are instantly in the land of the pleasure trap. And you are surrounded by the pleasure trap trying to get into your body and into your life. And you can defend it with an insulator, your routines. Those are your insulator. Anything that pushes you out of routine is a threat. And that's how that works.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Lisle. I think we have time for maybe a couple of questions more. Someone is asking, when making dietary changes, can you go through a grieving process and even experience depression?
Yeah, you probably could. I've certainly seen people. I'm not sure I would call it depressed. I would call it frustrated and deprived. So that's a slightly different emotional response than depression. I suppose one could be depressed, but I don't think that they would be depressed long, because I think they'd be right back eating the rich foods and instantly get out of their depression. I think that would be pretty hard to deny yourself. I think mostly what it's about, I wouldn't call it depression. I would call it frustration. And if you want to call it grief, it's sort of a frustrated longing that, yes, this is a process of coming out of an addictive like issue, where let's suppose you're 40 pounds overweight and you desperately would like to be thinner. And so your mind is running a cost benefit analysis on what is the right thing to do. And you look at the problem and you stick your toe in the water, and you look at your problem and you stick your toe in the water. And finally, one day you decide, you know what, I'm going to do this. And so you decide, you know what, I really need to do this for my life, because I need to look better and feel better, and I will feel better about myself, and I need to do this. And I'm going to have to give up this, that, and the other that I like. My Ezekiel bread with nut butter and my, I don't know, fried shrimp once a week, or whatever it is that the person is doing. So can there be a, quote, grieving process? In a matter of sorts. It's not grieving for a beloved cat, but it's a frustration that says, you know, do I really have to do this? Do I have to give up this experience of these super normal, pleasurable foods in order to get what I want, that I want more? And the answer is yes, you do. And is it a sacrifice? Yes, it is a sacrifice. Now, that sacrifice is greatest at the beginning, because your taste buds are not as sensitive as they will be. And so the food that is the healthiest food does not taste as good as it will taste 90 days from now. Chemical senses studies have demonstrated this multiple times, that you become more sensitive to food when the food reduces in its concentration of sugar, fat, and salt. So an apple is not an apple is not an apple. An apple for someone who has been eating really rich foods doesn't taste as good as an apple for somebody who hasn't been. The same thing is true of steamed carrots. So to me, there's about nothing in the world better than a good orange or good peach, but that's not true if you're eating ice cream every night. So there will be a process by which the person must pay a price as they move out of richer foods into less rich foods. They will become used to that, and they will enjoy their healthy food greatly. However, supernormal foods are supernormal. They're having a drug-like effect, and so it is a sacrifice of sorts. The sacrifice is minor in the long run. It can be bigger in the short run. And so, yes, there can be a consternation over this sacrifice. I mean, it is a legitimate short-term sacrifice that the person feels. And and it can give you cognitive dissonance about whether or not it's worth it. And this is probably where any depression is really coming from. It's probably not from the notion of, gee, I'm giving up my pizza and my ice cream. It's usually about probably a deep calculation that is saying, I'm not sure I'm going to give up the pizza and ice cream. I don't want to give up the pizza and ice cream, but I must give up the pizza and ice cream if I'm going to lose this 40 pounds. And this 40 pounds is very depressing. And as I look across the future of giving up the pizza and ice cream, I can suspect the possibility that I won't do it because the allure is too great and the short-term benefit of the pizza and ice cream is too great. And so I'm feeling depressed about the fact that I may never lose this weight, and I may never feel good about myself, and I may never get the attention that I want from other people, and the esteem that I would like for being more attractive. And I think that is a constellation of internal processes that is associated with the contemplation of giving up the rich foods. I think that is what the person may be feeling, and it's not the giving up the rich foods itself. Okay, so I think that's something that the person that asked this question may want to look at, because I find that the following is true. When people give up the rich foods and they are grinding into the groove, they are not depressed. Within a week, they feel a self-esteem that they may have not felt in a long time. So they are not in any kind of grief and mourning over the food particularly. They are feeling an excitement that they are on their way. So I think that this is more a process where the person is fiddling with the idea and contemplating and thinking about it, and has done very short-term moves, like for a day or half a day or a meal, where they have gotten away from rich foods and they're thinking about what is required, and they are aware of what it is. And I think they are depressed over contemplating that they may not do this, and they may settle in this life for never having done this journey. And I believe that that's probably the depression that this person, I'm speculating, but I believe a lot of people feel depression from that dimension.
Right. All right. Thank you. Okay, let's take the last question of the day. And so I think this is something that a lot of people wonder. When stopping something, whatever it may be, caffeine or sugar or salt or whatever, flour, this person says, do you recommend going cold turkey or a more gradual weaning off process?
Okay, with coffee, I would recommend a weaning off process. So if you're drinking 6 cups of coffee a day, go down to 4, then go down to 2, then go down to 1, and then go down to none. Okay, that's how I would do it. Otherwise, you're going to be having a heck of headaches, and you're not going to want to do it. So I would go down from something like that slowly. From other things, I'm not a person that thinks that you wouldn't ever eat any sugar, that you wouldn't ever eat any salt. I wouldn't eat any oil particularly myself. I probably get some in restaurants, undoubtedly I do, but I never put oil on anything. And Dr. McDougall is supportive of sprinkling sugar and salt on the surface of food to make that more tasty as desired. So these aren't evil things. They're things that we need to respect, and we need to adjust as appropriate for what our own personal goals are. So now the issue is, I wouldn't be looking to, quote, go off all sugar. I might. It depends upon who I am and what my motivations are and what I'm trying to accomplish. I think I did that once for a few months. I've done it a couple times. I did that in my teens when I found out about this, and I was going to be holier than everybody else. So I did that, I think, for a year or something. Then I did it again when I lived with my good friend Alan Goldhammer up in Portland as a young man. I delivered sprouts for a sprout company. Um, I was totally clean for about 4 months. I don't think I've had other periods where I was fastidious about not having any kind of refined sugar. So it's a very minor thing in my life, but I'm going to put it on my oatmeal. Not much, just enough to make it a lot tastier for me. So I'm not fastidious about this. So the question of how would you manage this? I would say manage it comfortably for yourself. A lot of times, if people are eating a high-fat diet, I will tell them the first move is to give up half the fat. Like, let's look at what you're doing and let's just cut it in half. Because a lot of times the person's palate can handle that pretty well. It's not a big sacrifice. And then after a few weeks, they get used to that. And then we look at it again, and then we're going to cut some more out. So, I would say most of the time for most things, I'm perfectly comfortable with people going stepwise. At the McDougall program, when we bring people in for the 10-day program, there's salt on the table. I don't see a lot of people use it a lot because the food's done so well and the spice combinations are so well. I see very few people reaching for a salt shaker. I've seen a few. In terms of sugar use, I don't see a lot of that either because the food is tasty, but maybe a little bit, and that's fine. So I think people eating healthy foods and getting used to healthy foods, I think people will naturally knock down these sugar, fat, salt. They'll knock them down a lot just because it's a whole different bunch of flavor, and it's new and it's interesting and it's healthy and it has a really good ring to it. And if you're committed to this direction, the sacrifice is small, but there's no magic in going all at once and suffering your way through oatmeal without any sweetener to it. If you don't like it, don't do that to yourself. But if you're eating Count Chocula, then let's move from Count Chocula to oatmeal with some brown sugar. Okay, let's do that. And that will be that'll be the move that we would make.
Right. All right. Very good. Thank you, Dr. Lisle. We'll all appreciate your time here and answering questions.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Gustavo. It's great to see you. Now we have the real Gustavo with the truly grand piano in the background. So I love that. I love to see that. It fits you very well.
Oh, thank you. All right, so we will be sending an announcement actually from the Dr. McDougall office. We're making some changes because of my schedule and Dr. McDougall's schedule. So there will not be a webinar next Monday, and everybody will get an email explaining if there are any changes on the dates and times and the frequency. But just expect that email from Heather McDougall maybe in a couple of days. And thank you, Dr. Lisle, and we hope to see you sometime next month.
Pleasure as always. We'll see you soon.
All right, bye-bye.